fact is that there are long-standing problems with electronic record keeping at federal agencies. The Bush administration lost millions of emails relating to the U.S. attorney firings, the outing of covert CIA agent Valerie Plame, and other investigations. Millions. In 2007, the White House spokeswoman, Donna Perino, admitted that they lost 5 million emails. 5 million. And she said at the time, quote, "We screwed up."
On the screen, I've got figure 6 from the 2012 IG report showing most frequently used addresses for I-10 tax refunds. As you can see, nearly 24,000 tax refunds totaling $46.4 million were issued to the same address in Atlanta, Georgia. Bottom line, these items, I-10s, are costing taxpayers dearly because they can be used to fraudulently get tax refunds. And last month, the IG issued another report that makes it clear the IRS could be doing a better job protecting taxpayer dollars. Just look at the figure on the screen. Over 1,000 I-10s were assigned to individuals using the same address in Atlanta, Georgia. Do you agree there's still a problem or not? Yes or no?
I do agree there's still a problem. Yeah.
Also, the IG found the IRS workers handling the I-10 applications remain concerned that management will basically pressure them to rubber stamp applications instead of ensuring that only qualified individuals receive. Can you give us assurance that the IRS management won't do this anymore?
I need to look further into that allegation, but on its face, it sounds like something that's inappropriate, and I'll work with the team.
Let me just say in closing, your own report acknowledges the tax code is nearly impossible to administer because it's so complex, and based on the billions in improper payments being made with refundable credits, I'll just say your agency is proving you right every day, and it's time for the IRS to stop targeting Americans and start targeting fraud. I yield back.
The president, to his credit, agrees that this is a terrible abuse. He called the IRS scandal intolerable and inexcusable, and he called for those guilty of this misconduct to be held accountable. But when your department was asked to step in and investigate, no one has been held accountable for this abuse. In fact, your department installed a political donor of the president's to lead the investigation. Appointing a political donor to investigate a political activity I think, calls the entire investigation into question. And I can't imagine how this would be designed to instill public confidence in the investigation. Now, FBI Director Comey, to his credit, said this investigation was an important one for his agency. Now, though, it's been publicly reported that the department will not pursue criminal charges against any IRS official, even though the FBI's investigation has not yet been concluded. And shockingly, the department made this decision, if it's true, and you can certainly confirm it or refute it if it's not. They made this decision without even talking to Catherine Engelbrecht. I talked to her yesterday. She verified she has not heard a word from the Department of Justice or the FBI. So I would like to know, General Holder, what you have to say to Ms. Engelbrecht and other Americans who spent thousands of dollars defending themselves against harassment by the Internal Revenue Service for daring to exercise their constitutional right to participate in the political process. And I'd like to ask you whether you will agree to make sure that your department consults personally with every victim of this type of intimidation by the federal government. And if you can tell us, what kind of accountability can the American people expect from this abuse of power?
Well, what I would say is, first off, that I don't remember the exact words that I used, but I think shortly after the president made the statements that you made, I expressed similar concerns, and I was the one who actually ordered the investigation into these matters. They're being handled by the Criminal Division in the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Division in the Justice Department, the Treasury Inspector General, and in the FBI, as you indicated. This is a matter that is an open inquiry. The matter is still going on. Press reports, I think what you're referring to with regard to how the case is ultimately going to be decided is a press report. I can tell you that the reporters who have made those assertions are not people privy to what is actually going on in the investigation. It is something, as I said, that is open. The investigation is proceeding.
So is there still a potential for criminal charges to be brought in connection with the investigation since it has not been concluded?
Well, obviously, all the options that we have are on the table, given the fact that there has not been a determination either to bring charges or to decline the case.
Well, don't you think it's the responsibility of the department to actually contact the people with the most information about what exactly happened, like this victim of this abuse of power, like Catherine Engelbrecht?
I'm not familiar with the woman who you referred to, but I have confidence in the career people at the FBI and the other investigative agencies to conduct a thorough, comprehensive investigation, and that's what I would expect of them. And that is why matters like this take as long as they do.
Well, would you please, in conclusion, I know my time's up, would you please commit here to me and publicly to contact Catherine Engelbrecht and to get her side of the story? Or have somebody on your staff do so?
The determinations as to who gets interviewed will be made by the career people who are conducting the investigation. As you have said, and I don't want to cast any doubt on what you have said, she seems like a logical person to talk to on the basis of what you've said. I don't have any independent knowledge of what her involvement is or what her organization is about. But that is something that I would leave to the people who are, as I said, career professionals to make determinations as to who needs to be interviewed.
Well, I hope the department would talk to the victim.
Plus whatever else I might need. It is very good to be here. I want to thank the Attorney General for the good work he does. I know he is aided with great skill by two former Schumer employees who work for you, Elliot Williams, who's been gone for a while, and Brian Fallon, who we miss very much and is doing a good job for you. That's our comment.
Thank you, Senator Schumer.
Standing documents within reason. And I don't get that sense from this committee that we're going in that direction. I think we're going in the opposite direction. To me, this is a partisan witch hunt, which has already cost the IRS more than $14 million. And compliance with these outrageous requests will only cause that number to continue to grow, and it certainly doesn't reflect good oversight, Mr. Chairman, and I'm really appalled that this would that this investigation has gone to this level.
Would the gentleman yield?
I certainly do.
Do you feel that asking for all of Lois Lerner's emails so that we can search through to see whether or not she inappropriately was in fact actively doing more than we already know? Do you think that's inappropriate?
I don't have a problem asking for Lois Lerner's email, but I do have a issue with asking for 800 people's emails. I mean, are all 800 connected to this investigation?
Well, like I say, we haven't received all of Lois Lerner's emails, which is one of the things we asked for.
Can we be more specific about what we're looking for Lois Lerner from her email?
No, we cannot.
The next hearing on this matter should be with the Inspector General of the IRS, who has not been before this committee for over a year. Anything else would show that this committee is not using its time and resources seriously. With that, I thank the Commissioner for being here today, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Put the shoe on the other foot. When Democrats were investigating the lies and the incompetence of the Bush administration, we would be in disbelief at this ineptitude as well. as we were, for example, when we learned that the Bush White House admitted that it lost nearly 5 million emails between March 2003 and October 2005 related to the allegations of the politically motivated dismissal of then U.S. attorneys. Fortunately, we can put suspicious minds at ease today. The Inspector General for the IRS, a man named J. Russell George, who was a Republican political appointee of President George W. Bush, has already testified that Ms. Lerner did not learn about the inappropriate criteria being used in local Cincinnati IRS office until a meeting of June 29th, 2011, at least 16 days after Ms. Lerner's hard drive crashed.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please have a seat. Let the record reflect that all witnesses answered in the affirmative. Since I understand that there will only be one opening statement for all three of you, given by Inspector General, we will not observe their 5 minutes. Take the time reasonably you need. You're their effectively only witness. And Mr. McCarthy, welcome back. I know that for many years you looked from this side of the dais for Mr. Towns and others, and you wondered what it would be like on that side. Today you find out.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I look forward to it.
Thank you. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address specific issues that have been raised related to our report published May 14th, 2013 on inappropriate criteria used by the Internal Revenue Service to identify tax-exempt applications for review. Our report included three key findings. First, that the Internal Revenue Service used inappropriate criteria that identified for review organizations applying for tax-exempt status based upon their names or policy positions rather than on tax-exempt law and Treasury regulations. Second, that the cases that the IRS referred for review as potential political cases experienced delays. And third, the IRS made unnecessary and burdensome requests for information. On May 10th, 2013, at an American Bar Association conference held in Washington, D.C., Lois Lerner, the director of exempt organizations for the IRS at the time, stated, quote, "Instead of referring to the cases as advocacy cases, they actually used case names on this list. They, the determinations unit in Cincinnati, Ohio, used names like Tea Party or Patriots, and they selected cases simply because the applications had those names in the title. That was wrong. That was absolutely incorrect, insensitive, and inappropriate," end of quote. She also stated that some cases were delayed and unnecessary questions were asked, confirming the three key findings of our report. The storyline based on Ms. Lerner's presentation was that the IRS had apologized for inappropriately targeting conservative organizations. Ms. Lerner made her statements on May 10th, 2013, before our audit was completed and issued on May 14th, 2013. It has been asserted that TICTA concluded that the IRS inappropriately targeted conservative organizations. However, that narrative is based upon Ms. Lerner's statements, not on TICTA's conclusions. It is imperative for me to emphasize that our audit never labeled groups as conservative or liberal. TICTA reviewed the process used by the IRS from May 2010 through May 2012 to screen cases for potential political campaign intervention. In other words, advocating for or against a candidate running for political office. As of the end of May 2012, the IRS provided TICTA a list of 298 organizations that it, the IRS, had selected for further scrutiny. The report focuses on the terms, quote, Tea Party, Patriots, and 912, unquote, is that the IRS provided us a document at the beginning of our audit that showed these were the terms they used to select the potential political cases. I submit for the record a document that the IRS provided to my organization on May 17th, 2012, while we were still in the planning phase of our audit. This document is purported to be the language used in the Be on the Lookout, otherwise known as BOLO listing, over time to describe potential political cases. We focused our audit on the BOLO entries shown in this document precisely because the IRS represented that these were the criteria relevant to potential political cases. Furthermore, the IRS provided us additional names and policy positions that were used to select cases, including Patriots and 912. The scope of our audit included the process the IRS used to review applications for tax exemption from groups potentially involved in political campaign intervention. During the audit, our understanding was that the other BOLO entries were not used to select cases for this type of specialized review. As new information emerges, we are continuing to review whether this is accurate. In interviews, emails, and documents, we found repeated discussions of the use of Tea Party and other related criteria described in our audit report. New documents from July 2010 listing the term, quote, progressive, unquote, but noting that progressive are not considered Tea Parties, were provided to TICTA last week on July 9th, 2013. They were not provided during our audit, even though similar documents that quote Tea Party, unquote, but not progressive were. I am very disturbed that these documents were not provided to our auditors at the outset, and we are currently reviewing this issue. To follow up on the information that other terms like quote progressive and occupy, unquote, appeared in various sections of the BOLO list, we conducted additional analyses to provide you, members of Congress, with the data that we have due to the interest in this issue. However, we do not have full audit findings on the use of these other criteria. With respect to the 298 cases that the IRS selected for political review, as of the end of May 2012, 3 have the word progressive in the organization's name. Another 4 were used, quote, progress, unquote. None of the 298 cases selected by the IRS as of May 2012 used the name Occupy.
I would say to the ranking member, sounds like his understanding is correct, and I would hope we do the same with, the IG, Mr. Russell George. I'd like to see all of his overt partisan political emails. I'd like to see if he's emailed relatives, if he's emailed staff members of this committee. I think that would be relevant to putting in context his findings.
Chairman asked you if you'd spoken to a number of people in the process of your investigation. Former IRS Commissioner Schulman, you said no. Former acting IRS Commissioner Mr. Miller, you said no. And then Sarah Hall Ingram, you said yes. Who is she?
Sarah Hall Ingram runs the Affordable Care Act operations within the IRS, and I speak to her on an ongoing basis as part of my responsibility to engage with my senior leadership team on the ongoing operations of the IRS.
What was her role during this period of time, during the period of time in the tax exempt?
It's a good question, and that's one that we're looking at, and I'll do my best to explain it right now. Ms. Ingram was the commissioner of the tax-exempt government entities organization leading into when these events occurred. So the IG report starts to surface issues in and around early, let's say March 2010 is when this fact pattern begins on the IG timeline. It's my understanding that Ms. Ingram served as the commissioner of tax-exempt, government-exempt organizations, which is a level above the exempt organizations unit, and that org chart is in my report. And she served in that capacity until somewhere around the spring or summer of 2010.
So there was an overlap.
So there's an overlap. At that point in time, she moved over and was detailed over to begin her work in running the Affordable Care Act.
Mr. Werfel, apparently you were put in by by the administration to run cover until somebody new would come in. It is now my time, and I'm going to explain to you what this committee has found. Mr. Werfel, in 2 months, out of 64 million pages, you've delivered 12,100, and this is over 2,500 of them. They're completely useless. Your interpretation of 6103 is so broad that you're delivering no meaningful information. More importantly, we have prioritized a number of discovery. Lois Lerner, a woman who did not properly but did attempt to take the fifth before our committee. We've asked for all correspondence. It has not been forthcoming. We've asked for correspondence with the White House. Mr. Werfel, let's understand something. Correspondence with the White House, by definition, had darn well better not include 6103, so redaction is not appropriate. We are not covered by the Privacy Act. Therefore, even if it includes names of individuals like Sheldon Adelson and how you're going to target him or something, even if it included that, quite frankly, it would not be 6103. It would be communications with the outside. Additionally, your people have unilaterally chosen to redact, according to them, private information. Mr. Werfel, you don't have the right to have private communications on government time and government equipment. If Lois Lerner or others had private communications, they are not subject to 6103, because if there's 6103 in there, we expect them to be immediately referred for criminal prosecution. You can't have private conversations and release 6103. That, of course, would be wrong. So as we go through this discovery and find far excess redacting, no question at all, slow-rolling discovery, limiting search terms, you may call it prioritizing, but you're not prioritizing as we need them. It is my expectation that we should have already received communications to and from the White House. We should have already received communication between anyone who was conducting non-6103 business. We should have already received Lois Lerner's entire packet. These are not my expectations. These are the American people's expectations.
Now, on a different matter, Mr. President, when the IRS targeting of conservative groups came to light after the last presidential election, just about everyone denounced the agency's Nixonian tactics. Members of both parties, from the president on down, called it outrageous and inexcusable, and just about everyone agreed that no stone should be left unturned in figuring out how it happened in the first place. Well, that was more than a year ago, and despite the president's assurances that he was just as mad as everybody else, his administration has been anything but cooperative in the time that's elapsed since then. Instead of working with Congress to get to the bottom of what happened, the president's allies actually went in the opposite direction. They tried to slip a regulation by the American people that would have effectively enshrined the IRS speech suppression tactics, the kind of tactics at the center of the IRS scandal, as a permanent agency practice. It was a brazen move on the administration's part. And administration officials only backed down after Americans literally rose up and demanded that the IRS get out of the speech suppression business for good. Even some of our friends on the pro-First Amendment left, a dwindling constituency in recent years, joined us in condemning it. But I doubt we've seen the last of the administration's anti-free speech efforts. We've seen a revival in recent weeks of a radical, truly radical proposal to change the First Amendment. And when it comes to the IRS scandal, it's now quite obvious that we haven't seen the last of the administration's stalling either. The latest claim by the IRS is that somehow it lost a full 2 years' worth of emails from the woman in charge of the IRS department at the center of the scandal. They lost 2 years' worth of emails. But Congress submitted a request for these emails over a year ago. And they're suddenly telling us now? The committees investigating the scandal need those emails in order to figure out who knew what and when, and to determine whether any coordination was going on between the IRS and anyone outside the agency. So I'll be interested to see what the IRS commissioner has to say about all this when he testifies next week. But please, let's just skip past the dog ate my homework excuses buried in a late Friday news dump. The president promised to work hand in hand with Congress on this matter, so his administration needs to live up to that promise immediately.